In 1996, the Chicago Bulls did something that had never been done before and might never be done again the same way. 72 wins, just 2 losses at home all season, and a championship won on Father's Day by a man still grieving his murdered father. But here's what most people get wrong about that team. It wasn't inevitable. 18 months earlier, Michael Jordan was playing minor league baseball, Scottie Pippen was demanding a trade, and the guy who would become their third star, he'd just been traded for a backup center because nobody else wanted him. So how did 3 guys, one coming off retirement, one who wanted out, and one the league considered untouchable in the worst way, become the backbone of the greatest team ever assembled? This is more than just the story of 72 wins. This is the story of how a front office gamble, a coaching philosophy borrowed from Native American spirituality, and one man's fury at being embarrassed turned a fractured roster into something basketball had never seen. We are going to break down exactly how Jerry Krauss built this roster, why Phil Jackson's system was the only thing that could contain these egos, and the specific moments that define this historic run. And we need to start with the guy nobody wanted to give credit to, because without him, none of this happens.
For Pippen. Oh, a baseball! Scottie Pippen in the face! Michael challenges and slams.
Rodman diving for the rebound. What an effort that was.
For 3. Rebound!
Now Tony drives inside.
Here's Jordan. Did not have the shot. Kerr does. Here's Paxson for 3. Yes! The Bulls!
In a way, Phil Jackson was a master chef, but he needed someone to supply the ingredients. That job belonged to Jerry Krauss. Born and raised in Chicago, Krauss spent decades as a scout and front office executive before taking over the Bulls' basketball operations in 1985. What separated him wasn't charm or star power, it was relentless talent evaluation and an obsession with roster construction. Krauss traded for Scottie Pippen and drafted Horace Grant in 1987, laying the foundation for Chicago's first championship core. He also pushed the organization to hire Phil Jackson as an assistant coach, years before Jackson was a household name, while he was still coaching in the minor leagues and overseas. But Krauss's influence went far beyond assembling talent. He made cold, often unpopular decisions that prioritized long-term success over personal relationships, even when that meant clashing with Michael Jordan. In 1988, Krauss traded Charles Oakley, one of Jordan's closest friends and on-court enforcers, believing the Bulls needed more size and skill to contend long-term. A year later, he fired head coach Doug Collins against Jordan's wishes and elevated Phil Jackson, convinced that a system-driven approach was the only way to transcend individual brilliance. That tension was magnified by how sharply Krauss contrasted with Jordan in every imaginable way. Jordan was tall, magnetic, hyper-competitive, the ultimate alpha. Krauss was short, overweight, awkward, and intensely analytical, a front office lifer who represented restraint instead of swagger. To Jordan, Crumbs became the embodiment of management insisting that even the greatest player alive wasn't bigger than the team. That belief produced championships, but it also ensured Krauss and Jordan would never truly stand on the same side of history, only under the same banner. The seeds of the 95-96 Bulls were planted immediately after Chicago's first three-peat. It began with Tony Kukoc. In July 1993, the Bulls ended a 4-year pursuit by signing Kukoc to an 8-year, $17.6 million contract. While the stories often focus on how Krauss's fascination with Kukoc irritated Jordan and Pippen during the 1992 Olympics, they overlook the foresight it took to identify him in the first place. Krauss drafted Kukoc in the second round at a time when European players, especially skilled, perimeter-orientated bigs, were not valued. He saw a 6'10" forward with guard skills and a smooth three-point stroke before the league was ready for that archetype. Next came Steve Kerr and Bill Wennington. Kerr arrived on his fourth NBA team, Wennington returned to the league after 2 years in Italy, joining his third NBA stop. Then, in February 1994, Krauss made a pivotal move, trading Stacey King to Minnesota for Luke Longley. For Krauss, this was both an admission and a gamble. He had selected King 6th overall in 1989, ahead of Phil Jackson's preferred choice, Shawn Kemp. Longley, the 7th pick in 1991, had been an inconsistent starter in Minnesota, but at 7'2", he was 3 inches taller than King, 2 years younger, and earned nearly the same salary. The coaching staff believed Longley was a cleaner fit for Phil Jackson's triangle, a true 7-footer who could pass, screen, and occupy space without needing touches. That belief mattered. Coaches wanted him because they saw a centre who could do the unglamorous work the system demanded and unlock everything else around him. That 1994 roster quietly marked the birth of the new Bulls. Despite losing the best player in the world, Chicago won only 2 fewer games than the year before. Much of that came from younger, more adaptable talent. The Bulls replaced 33-year-old Trent Tucker, 31-year-old Rodney McRae, and 31-year-old Darrell Walker with Kukoc, Kerr, and Wennington. Veterans Bill Cartwright and John Paxson saw their minutes shrink, replaced by Longley and Pete Myers. Led by 6 of the 93 team's top 7 players, the 1994 Bulls rode the residual momentum of a championship core. But by 1995, the foundation was cracking. Horace Grant left in a contentious, drawn-out departure. The Bulls redirected that money to Ron Harper, hoping he could absorb some of the scoring void left by Jordan. Instead, Harper fell out of the starting lineup and averaged fewer than 7 minutes per game in the 1995 playoffs. Still, by 1995, 7 pillars of the second three-peat were already in place: Pippen, Kukoc, Kerr, Wennington, Longley, Harper, and Judd Buechler. And slowly, the identity of the team began to shift, from players chasing shots and minutes to players chasing redemption. A lot changed between the day Michael Jordan walked away in 1993 and the moment he came back in March 1995. The league changed, the Bulls changed, and the illusion that Chicago would always sit on top of the NBA quietly disappeared. With Jordan in Birmingham chasing a baseball dream, the Bulls went from an empire to a team searching for itself. They were still good, still disciplined, still dangerous, but they were no longer feared in the same way. Scottie Pippen became the unquestioned leader, and a new group of players, Luke Longley, Steve Kerr, Bill Wennington, Judd Buechler, settled into defined roles in a post-Jordan locker room. Then, Jordan walked back in. Of course, he was still Michael Jordan, but for the players who arrived after 1993, it was a reset. Jordan's return didn't come with a grace period. It came with championship urgency. For players who hadn't lived through the first three-peat, that meant recalibrating expectations overnight and learning what greatness actually demanded. The Bulls made the playoffs in both 94 and 95, but without Jordan, there were no parades. They lost in the second round to the Knicks in 94 and the Magic in 95. The throne was vacant and the league had already moved on. When Jordan returned in late 94-95 season, it sparked hope, but not magic. He averaged 24.8 points on 39.4% shooting over his first 4 games back before delivering the reminder everyone needed. 55 points at Madison Square Garden, capped by a last-second assist to Bill Wennington for the win. The brilliance was still there, but so was the rust. Chicago finished 13-4 after his return. They handled Charlotte in the first round, and then they ran into Orlando. The timing favoured the Magic. Jordan was still shaking off baseball legs. The Bulls weren't yet the finished product. Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway controlled the series. Horace Grant added a little extra motivation, and Orlando sent Chicago home. The moment everyone remembers came in Game 1 with under 20 seconds left when Nick Anderson stripped Jordan to seal the win. Anderson said afterward, "Number 45 is not number 23. I couldn't have done that to number 23." Jordan switched back to number 23 in Game 2 and dropped 38 in a win, but the Bulls were eliminated in 6 games on their home floor. Ron Harper remembered what came next. "We were sitting in the locker room after and Michael goes, 'We're going to start working out,' I said. 'When?' He said, 'We start tomorrow. They want to see number 23. I'm going to give them number 23. The narrative afterward focused on Jordan's struggles, but the numbers tell a different story. 31.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 2.3 steals, and 1.4 blocks per game, after not playing basketball professionally for nearly 2 years. Still, the loss mattered, and it lit something dangerous. That summer, Jordan trained like a man possessed. On the Warner Brothers lot during the filming of Space Jam, he requested to have a basketball court and a private gym, what players would later call the Jordan Dome. Anyone who stepped into those pickup games learned quickly, this wasn't a man easing back into the league. This was a man sharpening a weapon. But even with Jordan fully reignited and the roster nearly complete, Phil Jackson saw another problem that still plagued the team. Orlando had overwhelmed Chicago with size on the perimeter. 6'7" Penny Hardaway, 6'6" Nick Anderson, 6'8" Dennis Scott, and 6'6" Brian Shaw. Big guards everywhere. Jackson already had Scottie Pippen running point for stretches of the game, but he started thinking bigger, and about what a lineup could be. What if you flooded the floor with size and length at the guard spots? Not just to create mismatches on offense, but to suffocate teams defensively in ways they weren't prepared for. To make that vision real, Jerry Krauss and Jackson exploited the 1995 expansion draft. Each team could protect 8 players and lose only 1. The Bulls protected the obvious core: Jordan, Pippen, Kukoc, Kerr, and all 3 centers, Longley, Perdue, and Wennington. Krauss wanted flexibility. He planned to trade either Longley or Perdue, and with expansion teams in Toronto and Vancouver, he couldn't risk leaving Bill Wennington unprotected. A Canadian big man was exactly the kind of players those markets would be tempted to grab for marketing reasons. That left one name exposed: B.J. Armstrong. Fans were stunned. A former All-Star, a fan favourite, but that was the point. By dangling the best player available, the Bulls guaranteed Armstrong would be selected from their squad, and only Armstrong. Toronto took him first overall, exactly as planned. That cleared the way for Ron Harper to start, Kerr to settle into his shooting role, and the Bulls to redirect Armstrong's salary toward the final missing piece: power forward. Phil wanted Derek Coleman, Jordan wanted Jason Williams. Krauss knew they couldn't land Barkley, Kemp, or Larry Johnson. That's when the conversation turned to one player Krauss had long sworn was not our kind of person: Dennis Rodman.
Sealed by Pippen, tough pass, and Rodman shot they wanted. What a great play.
Good look at a 3. Rodman chases it to the side and saves it for Pippen. Rodman diving for the rebound. What an effort that was.
Rodman was still the best rebounder in the world, but by 1995, teams wanted nothing to do with him. His time in San Antonio had dissolved into chaos, missed practices, confrontations, and open defiance. Talent wasn't the question, control was. Most teams saw risk, the Bulls saw leverage. With Longley emerging, Perdue became expendable. Krauss sent Perdue to San Antonio for Rodman and completed the roster. The vision Phil Jackson had drawn up finally came to life. Size without stiffness, versatility without ego-driven roles. Phil urged Kukoc to embrace the 6-man role. Longley became the starter, Rodman anchored the defense, Harper replaced Armstrong, and Chicago became something the league hadn't seen before: a shape-shifting lineup that could go big or small without losing its identity. It all worked on the whiteboard, but before it could survive the season, the travel, the egos, the friction, Phil Jackson still had one final task. He had to make it work on a human level. Phil Jackson's impact on the Bulls dynasty is the foundation. The idea that anyone could have coached Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen to 6 titles completely misses the point. Jordan was already the most talented player in the world before Phil arrived. What Jackson provided was structure. He built an environment where stars could thrive without tearing the squad apart. Every player, from the franchise icon to the last man on the bench, understood the same truth. Individuality was allowed, but the team always came first. That balance defined Phil's approach. He demanded absolute commitment on the court while allowing players to be fully themselves off it. That's why Dennis Rodman didn't scare him. Freedom, however, came with responsibility. Rodman had to buy into the triangle, and more importantly, he had to let go of the bad boys' baggage. Before the season ever truly started, Jackson made sure old grudges were addressed. Rodman owned his past and apologised. Scottie accepted it. Jordan signed off. Only then was Dennis welcomed in. And Rodman wasn't the first star Phil had to bend toward the system. That honour belonged to Michael Jordan. Jackson asked the greatest scorer the game had ever seen to sacrifice something, to stop chasing scoring titles and start chasing something bigger. The message was simple. Individual dominance doesn't guarantee championships. Jordan didn't love it at first, but he understood it. And once he bought in, the rest of the roster followed. Phil's authority only deepened during Jordan's retirement. Without MJ, the team had no choice but to become Phil's team. Scottie led by example, but Jackson led by presence. He didn't flatter stars. He didn't seek approval. His voice carried weight because it was never compromised. By the time Jordan returned, the Bulls had already been reshaped around Jackson's philosophy. Veterans replaced young players chasing minutes, roles were defined, egos were aligned. The locker room became unified instead of competitive. Everyone knew exactly where they fit. That was Phil Jackson's real genius. He knew when to challenge stars and when to step back. He believed a coach's message had a shelf life, and he worked with the front office to keep the vision fresh. Jerry Krauss found the pieces, Jackson made them fit, and despite their constant friction, together they built a team where volatile personalities didn't collide, they synchronized. And yes, it worked beautifully.
Michael Jordan.
The 95-96 Bulls went 72-10, posting an 87% winning percentage, the best regular season in NBA history at the time, surpassing the legendary 1972 Lakers. They ripped off an 18-game win streak, stood at 41-3 by early February, became the first team ever to reach 70 wins, and finished with 72 in front of their home crowd. They went 39-2 at the United Center, they won 33 games on the road, still one of the highest totals ever. Jordan led the league in scoring at 30.4 points per game. Pippen filled the stat sheet with 19.4 points, 6.4 rebounds, and 5.9 assists. Kukoc provided steady scoring off the bench. Rodman dominated the glass nightly. History had already been made, but the real test was still coming. Chicago tore through the playoffs, a first-round sweep of Miami, a familiar victory over New York, and then the rematch everyone was waiting for, Orlando. This time, there was no hesitation, no rust, no mercy. The Bulls swept the Magic, erasing the sting of the year before and reclaiming the Eastern Conference with authority. They lost just one game across 3 rounds before reaching the finals. Seattle waited on the other side. Chicago jumped out to a 3-0 series lead before dropping 2 games in Seattle. Game 6 returned to Chicago on Father's Day. Jordan didn't shoot well, but he controlled everything. He attacked the rim, he lived at the free throw line, he rebounded, he passed, he closed.
Trying to draw contact, no call, but Longley got it to Jordan. Here's Jordan. The step on Rakowski. Jordan with the putback. Point lead. Here is Jordan kicking it out. Pippen.
22 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Another championship. Back in the locker room, the moment finally caught up with him. Jordan collapsed on the floor, overwhelmed. His father had been gone for 3 years. This was the first title he'd won without him there. The weight of it all finally released. Jordan earned Finals MVP, averaging 27.3 points across the series. The Bulls had their 4th title, and the second three-peat had officially begun. Jordan won MVP, the scoring title, Finals MVP, All-NBA, All-Defense. Pippen finished near the top of MVP voting and Defensive Player of the Year voting. Both were named first-team All-NBA and All-Defense. This team proved something timeless. Championships aren't won by talent alone. And in an era built on parity, player movement, load management, and constant change, we may never see another team quite like the 95-96 Chicago Bulls again. They were perfectly constructed, brilliantly coached, and driven by motivations that went beyond basketball. Jerry Krauss found the pieces, Phil Jackson made them fit, and Michael Jordan burned with something that no defense could stop. But here's the thing, that Bulls team went on to win 2 more championships after this, and the way those teams were built and eventually destroyed is one of the most fascinating stories in NBA history. The dynasty didn't end because they stopped winning. It ended because the people who built it couldn't stop fighting each other. If you want the full story of how this dynasty kept winning and why it ultimately tore itself apart, comment below and make sure you're subscribed because the fall of the Bulls is just as fascinating as their rise.